Part 4. Notes of Class Talks and Lectures. Notes of Class Talks. On Art. In art, interest must be centered on the principal theme. Drama is the most difficult of all arts. In it, two things are to be satisfied. First, the ears, and second, the eyes. To paint a scene, if one thing be painted, it is easy enough. But to paint different things and yet to keep up the central interest is very difficult. Another difficult thing is stage management, that is, combining different things in such a manner as to keep the central interest intact. On music, there is science in Dhrupad, Khayal, etc., but it is in Kirtana, that is in Mathura and Viraha and other like compositions, that there is real music, for there is feeling. Feeling is the soul, the secret of everything. There is more music in common people's songs, and they should be collected together. The science of Dhrupad, etc., applied to the music of Kirtana will produce the perfect music. On Mantra and Mantra Chaitanya. The Mantra Shastris, upholders of the Mantra theory, believe that some words have been handed down through a succession of teachers and disciples, and the mere utterance of them will lead to some form of realization. There are two different meanings of the word Mantra Chaitanya. According to some, if you practice the repetition of a certain mantra, you will see the Ishtadevata, who is the object or deity of that mantra. But according to others, the word means that if you practice the repetition of a certain mantra received from a guru not competent, you will have to perform certain ceremonials by which that mantra will become Chaitana or living, and then its repetition will be successful. Different mantras, when they are thus living, show different signs, but the general sign is that one will be able to repeat it for a long time without feeling any strain, and that his mind will very soon be concentrated. This is about the Tantrika mantras. From the time of the Vedas, two different opinions have been held about mantras. Yaska and others say that the Vedas have meanings, but the ancient Mantra Shastris say that they have no meaning, and that their use consists only in uttering them in connection with certain sacrifices, when they will surely produce effect in the form of various material enjoyments or spiritual knowledge. The latter arises from the utterance of the Upanishads. On conceptions of Godhead. Man's inner hankering is to find someone who is free, that is, beyond the laws of nature. The Vedantins believe in such an eternal Ishvara, while the Buddhists and the Sankhyas believe only a Janyeshvara, created God, that is, a God who was a man before, but has become God through spiritual practice. The Puranas reconcile these two positions by the doctrine of incarnation. That is, they say that the Janyeshvara is nothing but the Nitya, eternal Ishvara, taking by Maya the form of a Janyeshvara. The argument of the Sankhyas against the doctrine of eternal Ishvara, which is how a liberated soul can create the universe, is based on false grounds. For you cannot dictate anything to a liberated soul. He is free, that is, he may do whatever he likes. According to the Vedanta, the Janyeshwaras cannot create, preserve, or destroy the universe. On food. You preach to others to be men but cannot give them good food. I have been thinking over this problem for the last 4 years. I wish to make an experiment whether something of the nature of flattened rice can be made out of wheat. Then we can get a different food every day. About drinking water, I searched for a filter which would suit our country. I found one pan-like porcelain vessel through which water was made to pass, and all the bacilli remained in the porcelain pan. But gradually that filter would itself become the hotbed of all germs. This is the danger of all filters. Continued searching, I found one method by which water was distilled and then oxygen was passed into it. After this, the water became so pure that great improvement of health was sure to result from its use. On sannyasa and family life. Talking of the respective duties of a monk and a householder, Swamiji said, a sannyasin should avoid the food, bedding, etc., which have been touched or used by householders in order to save himself, not from hatred towards them, so long as he has not risen to the highest grade, that is, become a Paramahamsa. A householder should salute him with Namo Narayanaya. and a sannyasin should bless the former. Meru sarsha payor yadvata, surya khadyota yoriva, sarit sagara yor yadvata, tatha bhikshu grahasthayoho. Like the difference between the biggest mountain and a mustard seed, between the sun and a glowworm, between the ocean and a streamlet, is the wide gulf between a sannyasin and a householder. Swami Vivekananda made everyone utter this, and chanting some Vedanta stanzas said, "You should always repeat to yourselves these shlokas. Shravana not only means hearing from the Guru, but also repetition to our own selves. Avrittirasakrudupadeshat. Scriptural truth should be often repeated, for such has been repeatedly enjoined. In this sutra of Vedanta, Vyasa lays stress on repetition." On questioning the competency of the Guru. In the course of a conversation, Swamiji spiritedly remarked, "Leave off your commercial calculating ideas. If you can get rid of your attachment to a single thing, you are on the way to liberation. Do not see a public woman or sinner or sadhu. That vile woman also is the Divine Mother. A sannyasin says once, twice that she is mother. Then he gets deluded again and says, 'Hence, O vile, unchaste woman.' At a moment, all your ignorance may vanish. It is foolish talk that ignorance disperses gradually. There are disciples who have been devoted to the Guru even when he has fallen from the ideal. I have seen in Rajputana one whose spiritual teacher had turned a Christian, but who nevertheless went on giving him his regular dues. Give up your Western ideas. Once you have pledged your faith to a particular teacher, stick to him with all force. It is children who say that there is no morality in the Vedanta. Yes, they are right. Vedanta is above morality. Talk of high things, as you have become sannyasins." Sri Ramakrishna, the significance of his life and teachings. In a narrow society, there is depth and intensity of spirituality. The narrow stream is very rapid. In a Catholic society, along with the breadth of vision, we find a proportionate loss in depth and intensity. But the life of Sri Ramakrishna upsets all records of history. It is a remarkable phenomenon that in Sri Ramakrishna there has been an assemblage of ideas deeper than the sea and vaster than the skies. We must interpret the Vedas in the light of the experience of Sri Ramakrishna. Shankaracharya and all other commentators made the tremendous mistake to think that the whole of the Vedas spoke the same truth. Therefore, they were guilty of torturing those of the apparently conflicting Vedic texts which go against their own doctrines into the meaning of their particular schools. As in the olden times, it was the Lord alone, the deliverer of the Gita, who partially harmonized these apparently conflicting statements. So, with a view to completely settling this dispute, immensely magnified in the process of time, he himself has come as Sri Ramakrishna. Therefore, no one can truly understand the Vedas and Vedanta unless one studies them in the light of the utterance of Sri Ramakrishna, who first exemplified in his life and taught that these scriptural statements, which appear to the cursory view as contradictory, are meant for different grades of aspirants and are arranged in the order of evolution. The whole world will undoubtedly forget its fights and disputes and be united in a fraternal tie in religious and other matters as a consequence of these teachings. If there is anything which Sri Ramakrishna has urged us to give up as carefully as lust and wealth, it is the limiting of the infinitude of God by circumscribing it within narrow bounds. Whoever, therefore, will try to limit the infinite ideals of Sri Ramakrishna in that way will go against him and be his enemy. One of his own utterances is that those who have seen the chameleon only once know only one color of the animal, but those who have lived under the tree know all the colors that it puts on. For this reason, no saying of Sri Ramakrishna can be accepted as authentic unless it is verified by those who constantly lived with him and whom he brought up to fulfill his life's mission. Such a unique personality, such a synthesis of the utmost of jnana, yoga, bhakti, and karma has never before appeared among mankind. The life of Sri Ramakrishna proves that the greatest breadth, the highest catholicity, and the utmost intensity can exist side by side in the same individual, and that society also can be constructed like that, for society is nothing but an aggregate of individuals. He is the true disciple and follower of Sri Ramakrishna, whose character is perfect and all sided like this. The formation of such a perfect character is the ideal of this age, and everyone should strive for that alone. On Sri Ramakrishna and his views. By force, think of one thing at least as Brahman. Of course, it is easier to think of Ramakrishna as God, but the danger is that we cannot form Ishvara Buddhi, vision of divinity, in others. God is eternal, without any form, omnipresent. To think of him as possessing any form is blasphemy. But the secret of image worship is that you are trying to develop your vision of divinity in one thing. Sri Ramakrishna used to consider himself as an incarnation in the ordinary sense of the term, though I could not understand it. I used to say that he was Brahman in the Vedantic sense, but just before his passing away, when he was suffering from the characteristic difficulty in breathing, he said to me as I was cogitating in my mind whether he could even in that pain say that he was an incarnation. He who was Rama and Krishna has now actually become Ramakrishna, but not in your Vedantic sense. He used to love me intensely, which made many quite jealous of me. He knew one's character by sight and never changed his opinion. He could perceive, as it were, supersensual things, while we try to know one's character by reason, with the result that our judgments are often fallacious. He called some persons his antarangas, or belonging to the inner circle, and he used to teach them the secrets of his own nature and those of yoga. To the outsiders or bahirangas, he taught those parables now known as sayings. He used to prepare those young men, the former class, for his work, and though many complained to him about them, he paid no heed. I may have perhaps a better opinion of a bahiranga than an antaranga through his actions, but I have a superstitious regard for the latter. Love me, love my dog, as they say. I love that Brahmin priest intensely, and therefore love whatever he used to love, whatever he used to regard. He was afraid about me that I might create a sect, if left to myself. He used to say to some, "You will not attain spirituality in this life." He sensed everything, and this will explain his apparent partiality to some. He, as a scientist, used to see that different people required different treatment. None except those of the inner circle were allowed to sleep in his room. It is not true that those who have not seen him will not attain salvation. Neither is it true that a man who has seen him thrice will attain mukti, liberation. Devotion as taught by Narada, he used to preach to the masses, those who were incapable of any higher training. He used generally to teach dualism. As a rule, he never taught Advaitism, but he taught it to me. I had been a dualist before. Sri Ramakrishna, the nation's ideal. In order that a nation may rise, it must have a high ideal. Now that ideal is, of course, the abstract Brahman. But as you all cannot be inspired by an abstract ideal, you must have a personal ideal. You have got that in the person of Sri Ramakrishna. The reason why other personages cannot be our ideal now is that their days are gone, and in order that Vedanta may come to everyone, there must be a person who is in sympathy with the present generation. This is fulfilled in Sri Ramakrishna. So now you should place him before everyone. Whether one accepts him as a sadhu or an avatara does not matter. He said he would come once more with us. Then I think he will embrace Videha Mukti, absolute emancipation. If you wish to work, you must have such an Ishtadevata or guardian angel, as the Christian nations call it. I sometimes imagine that different nations have different Ishtadevatas, and these are each trying for supremacy. Sometimes I fancy such an Ishtadevata becomes powerless to do service to a nation.